All right, and I think we are live. Let me get a sip of my water here. My radio voice going? All right. So, for a lot of you, you may or may not have seen, if you guys look at the channel here, you'll notice that I did an interview with Doug, my client Doug, who is a long-term client. Done some meets, all that stuff. We talked about all that. So I'm going to let people trickle in here for a minute, and we'll get some questions going once people get in here. People need to make sure they're subscribed. You can't ask questions unless you've been subscribed to my channel at least 5 minutes. But if you guys would, please remember to like, hit the notification button down below, right? Click those likes. And I'm being polite. As people notice, I'm not saying anything anymore. If people are a problem, I just get rid of them. I'm not going to acknowledge them anymore. We're just going to hit the button and move on. And people will say, hey, what is allowed in here? Well, obviously, if you're just being rude, you're not going to be allowed to stick around, right? That's perfectly fair, perfectly reasonable. What else would determine some of that? This is weird. I don't have anyone watching so far. Normally, I have 20, 30, 40 people already in this quick. This might not be the best time slot. There we go. Now some people rolling in. A couple finally seeing the notifications. You guys got to hit the notification, to be alerted when these live streams come up. We were going to do the one with Doug today, but we couldn't get the software to work on his phone or the live with us, so we just did it as a separate interview that I uploaded. If you guys want to check that out. Yeah, let's get some people in here, get people following, get some questions going. We turn these into essentially a Q&A. Jay says, hey, man. Well, hey, man, back to you, Jay. People will also ask, well, what's allowed in here? Well, guys, some common sense. If you're just repeating stuff that you saw from some propaganda piece making up nonsense about me, I'm just going to get rid of you. I'm not going to be allowed to post. I'm not going to be rude about it. You're just going to be removed. The same thing, pretend that you're in real life when you ask your questions, and think about what you type of, if what I'm writing right here, would I say this face to face to, a man who's over 200 pounds and deadlifts over 600 pounds? Would I feel comfortable saying that 2 feet from him? Right? That's a good rule. Or ask yourself, if I write what I'm about to write here, would I be written up at my job or possibly fired? Those are good behavior rules for you to follow when thinking about what to post in a live. See, Chris, that's exactly what I mean about you. You know good and well why that person was removed, right? You know this already. And I can't tell you about her services. That's between you and her, right? You know good and well why. He was banned because he repeatedly kept asking about her being my client when he knows she has never been my client. That's called trolling. All right. Very, very simple. Just follow the rules, Chris. Total direct weekly sets on average for big and small muscle groups. Average isn't going to be useful. Here's the rule I give you guys. 10 is your baseline. 10 total sets. Okay, big and small muscles are irrelevant. The studies show that is not relevant to volume tolerance or volume threshold. The size of the muscle is not a factor. Okay, some muscles, even in the same person, handle more or less volume than others. It doesn't seem to be correlated to muscle sizes. Okay, 10 is your baseline. If you're going to exceed 10 sets per week, it needs to be a specific muscle that probably has a little more volume tolerance, number one. Number two, you need to ask yourself, does your lifestyle facilitate the recovery for that? Right? That's what's going on. Well, here's the thing, Chris. Everything that we need to say about my experience of having been her client has been said in her and I's mutual lives. I'm not going to really cover that because number two, a lot of it's therapy type related stuff. So it's not topics that I would discuss with the public. Does that make sense? The nature of our conversations and work, again, has to do with dealing with trauma and other stuff. So therefore, there is no way I'm going to discuss that publicly. And she wouldn't be able to either because again, it's a HIPAA issue. She can't. So I would say to you, that's everything you need to know. She helped me in dealing with certain types of trauma and how it affects me professionally and other things. Okay. And that's the entirety of the details that I would be willing to discuss. So there's not really much else to say. If you're interested in that type of service, put in an application. She is expensive though. She's not like my coaching rates, my $300 a month. If you think that's expensive, you're gonna don't even bother. Just put it that way. It's in the thousands. Like you're gonna probably pay her a minimum $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 to be a client. Just be aware. Okay, I compete in the 90 kilogram class, and when I water cut for comp, I lose around 15% of my lifts. Do you have any tips to reduce this? 15%. If we're at this point, Jay, it's you don't need to be water cutting at this point. You really need a coach at this point if that's what you're trying to do. All right. At that point, you need coaching. If you're having that big of a drop, or it's time to consider maybe the 90 kilo is not ideal for you. It's kind of like for me, I did those couple of meets in the 90 kilo, and I'm like, this is really too light of a weight class for me. Okay, it really is. Again, just the way that we have to look at things. Should I decrease the weight I use and stop one rep maxing if my back is rounding on deadlift? Well, Chelsea, it depends on what do you mean by back rounding. All right, back rounding is not an issue if you start rounded and you've practiced that technique and you have the strength for it. Like if you start rounded off the floor, but your back doesn't round further during the pull, you're good. If your back rounds after the weight breaks off the floor, now we've got a problem. And you need to figure out, is it technical? Is it compensation for a weak link? Like, is it technical as in you just don't know how to set up and perform a deadlift? In which case it needs to be fixed. Coach can walk you through that. But just be aware that getting out of those bad habits can be a little bit difficult because a coach can show you one time, and then if you're left on your own, you'll go right back to doing it again. Okay, if it's a technique issue. Meaning technique as far as where you're setting your hips, how far you have the bar in front of you, things like that. Now, if it's compensation, that's a whole nother issue. Well, I would say with some of that, Chelsea, you need to film your lifts and maybe have someone look at it. All right. What should I do about back pain when doing row squat deadlifts when it's not a form issue? Should I get an MRI scan? Do not. I'm going to say what Dr. Jordan Feigenbaum says on this. MD, right? He's like, do not get an MRI. Don't do that. And he's given very extensive reasons why he tells you not to do that. I kind of agree with those. You're going to create some placebo stuff. All right. Okay. Back pain does not always mean that there's a pathology. That's a very, very nuanced, complicated topic. Again, maybe talk to a specialist about it, but be aware that just because you're hurting is not indicative with an injury. There may be some soft tissue stuff going on that you need to look at, some work capacity things, but you could always talk to a physical therapist who specifically works with lifters. Recommendations for quad tendonitis. Think I got your 3x5 for too long. Got up to 160 kilograms for 3x5. I've now switched to conjugate. Do mostly box squats for now. Stop trying to Olympic squat. Do some high rep band work for your quad tendons, like extensions. Any coaching slots available? Yeah, I do almost always have slots. John, the odds of me not having slots if you put in a good application is really low. Meaning if I'm really full and it's, you're going to be like not a good client, I may not take it. But even if I'm full and don't even really have slots, if you put in a good application and you look like you're a good fit, I am probably still going to take you on. Makes sense. So just put in an application. As an elite coach, do you think 5-1 is generally a well-run program? It's a decent intermediate program. It runs into a lot of problems. It's pretty good as far as cookie cutter programs go, but for advanced lifters, it runs into a lot of issues. That's my thoughts. But keep in mind, are we talking about the original or all the massive variations? He's written a whole system at this point, right? And so I would say maybe go look at what his people are doing and talk to Wendler about it. At this point, I'm like, having messed with it quite a bit, I kind of fall back into that idea that it's not as good as conjugate. And just generally speaking, I would much rather see you on some version of conjugate, or some other specialized things that are custom written for you. Like I custom write my own stuff at this point, and it's not fully based on either. Some of the principles are there, but it's definitely not conjugate, and it's definitely not like 5-3-1. Chris says, have you thought about opening your own gym? Yeah, I've thought about it. Have you ever had a female client hit on you? How do you deal with that as a coach? You deal with it in a professional manner. I mean, obviously it's happened. But the thing is, you have to remember, set boundaries as a coach. Okay. If you're a professional, you have to set those boundaries. And honestly, I have found women don't cross boundaries as much as men do in general. And not necessarily hitting on sexually. It's personal boundaries. Sometimes your immature male clients will cross. But I don't really have any of those at this point. I've kind of weeded those out. I don't take many younger clients unless they compete. I'm kind of at that point, like right now, my absolute youngest client is 21. I mean, so he's still a boy. I mean, 21 is a boy. It's not, say this politely. I call anyone under 25 a boy. My clients who are in the juniors are 22, 23. I refer to them as boys. And that's just my worldview. So it's a younger guy. It's a kid. It's a boy. And that might offend some younger guys, but that's the term I use for them. But like right now, just because of some of the maturity issues, my youngest client is 21. And that's actually Lewis, who does the vlogs. He is currently my youngest client. Ideally, unless they compete or they're very, very dedicated with their training, I prefer not to even take many men under 25. And, and again, unless they're pretty mature. But young men will cross all sorts of boundaries. I don't know if this is correlated to back pain, but I tweaked my lat really bad when I came back from training. That's so in the lower back pain. So yeah, they could be related. I'm a beginner and my back is round during deadlifts. My rounding is consistent. My back is stronger than my legs, and I used to skip legs. Is that an issue? Yeah, it's probably weak hamstrings. Have you ever done any fighting sports? No. Do I strength coach people who do? Yes. I have never done any fighting sports. Like as a sport. Doesn't mean I didn't do some martial arts when younger, but I certainly didn't compete in anything as a sport. Most efficient form of GPP work, I do not have a lot of time in picking up. It's not going to be about efficient. They're in terms of time, GBP is GBP, meaning pick stuff that's going to get you where you want to be in the number of minutes that you want to do. Okay, that's not going to be a specific type. That's going to be about working a certain intensity range to stay within your time frames. I've heard you say reverse hypers are good for low back pain. What about for disc pain? Yes, Jay. They're very useful for even damaged disc. I have at least one client with a couple of disc herniations who the reverse hyper has worked wonders for. Andrew, I don't really give 531 advice other than to say go over to Wendler's page and ask those questions. Is deadlifts, hip thrust, hamstring curls enough for hamstrings, or should I implement good mornings and RDLs? It's not always about enough, right? Let's get rid of this. All right. It's not about, is it enough? I mean, I could come over and say, maybe you need to be doing good mornings as a primary. Hey, if you're telling me that if we have weak hamstrings, like we're looking at the possibility of, good mornings would be near the top of my list. Okay, not hip thrust. That wouldn't be anywhere near the top of my list. I know your position is there are no bad exercises if form is solid, but what exercises you wouldn't ever prescribe to any client? Above the knee rack pulls, I would probably never prescribe. I could argue it's a good grip training tool if done without straps, but there's other grip training tools that don't beat you up as much. Should I do good mornings and pull? What do you mean? Why do you have pull days? Run up or lower and do them on your lower days. Everything I program, Chelsea, is more or less is up or lower. I mean, I've done a little bit of almost push-pull like variations, but the pull is really just a deadlift day when I've done it. I've been seeing a lot of elite powerlifters on social media doing ultra high frequency bench uppers of 4 to 5 times for weeks. What are your thoughts on this? Is it overkill? I think that it's going to wreck their shoulders. I think that is not a sustainable long-term position, and I don't think that it gives you real benefits over a lower frequency with similar volumes. But again, it will just beat you up. I think that those people are not going to be long-timers in the game. They're not playing the long game. What's the most common bench press form mistake when you get a new client? Bent wrists. Look how easy that one. I didn't even have to think. It was just bent wrist. Wrist cock back, wrist not stack. Single most common form mistake with new clients by an enormous, fucking enormous margin. Like nothing else is even close. I mean, there's other stuff that's up there, but that if I had to say one, that just immediately springs out. Love your memes, Jason. Thank you. If one has the ability to break up their training sessions over the course of the day, would that lead to better results? No, I don't necessarily think it would. How do you as a coach determine whether low back pain is muscular or from damaged disc? That's a little too nuanced to go into here. It really is. Revival Fitness said he wanted to become a client potentially and collab. I don't know who that is. If he's interested in becoming a client, whoever that person is, I've never heard of them. They know how to put in an application. Will do, Coach, do you currently have any clients who grapple? If so, how much assistance work do you prescribe? Yes, I have clients who grapple. How much is, again, very dependent upon where we are with their training. Again, you guys always ask things like how much, but it's not a set thing. It could be very large amounts or it could be very, very little. It depends upon what's going on with the individual lifter. And it always does. And I know people don't like to hear that answer, but it's true. I have to look at what each person needs in terms of sport specificity, where they are, weak links, recovery. Always. There are some general principles that we obviously follow, but we're getting down to that. Okay. On the Quantins, I forgot I ordered some knee sleeves, and they apparently help blood flow to the area, which supposedly helps. No, they're not going to help at all with that. No, they don't help blood flow. They restrict blood flow. They might cut off circulation, which makes it less comfortable while you're doing it, but that's not a good thing. Let's see. Does interior pelvic tilt cause back pain? Maybe in some cases. Which one? You're asking which type of guitar is that? The one with the maple neck is a Fender Player Series. And the one with the rosewood neck is a Fender American Professional 2. They are both Stratocasters. I ran your ice cream fitness 5x5 back in the day and got to admit, nothing made my legs blow up more than those squats 5x5 3 times per week progressing. Oh yeah, it definitely works. You can't run it long term because as you get strong, it's too much workload. I know you said just talk to girls to get confidence. Sometimes it's tough to tell age, coach, and don't want to get in trouble because can't tell tips. What do you mean you can't tell age? All right, it's simple, bro. If you think a girl is too young, then don't talk to her. It's not that difficult. Plus, if you're an adult and you start talking to a girl and you find out she's in high school, because you'll figure out in conversations, maybe don't go on a date with her. It's not that hard. Okay, it's not that difficult. Meaning you might not know at a glance a girl's age, and that's okay. But once you start a conversation, you can tell pretty quickly. And there's nothing wrong with approaching someone who looks like they're an adult and attractive if they're close enough age to you. That's not illegal. That's not immoral. Just don't do anything, right? Once you start talking to them, you'll know pretty quickly, and you'll know if that's a no-go or not. Would you ever meet a client in person, have a beer, coffee? I'm a non-drinker. Darko, I'm a non-drinker. Have you ever played any heavy metal before? Yes. I don't really want to play metal these days. I played metal when I was very, very young, like 13, 15, 16 years old. These days, I'm interested in blues and a little more older hard rock. Been messing with some Sultans of Swing and Eric Clapton this last week. Hi, Coach. I'm out of the country for 3 weeks. Any recommendations on what I can do throughout that time without access to barbells? Take bands with you. Do lots of band work. Tips for talking to girls in the gym. Leave them alone. Let girls work out here at the gym. Well, I don't really care if you think my deadlifting technique is suboptimal. Assuming that's the real Alex or not, I quite frankly don't care. I didn't ask you. But thank you for your opinion. As another coach, if you were the real Alex Bromley, I'm sure you meant it from a place of love. But I'm just not interested, and that's okay. What do you think of warming up on squats with only partial reps and then gradually increasing depth? No. Got it, Coach. Are you on LinkedIn? I'm not using LinkedIn. What are your current opinion on coffee? Do you think the positives outweigh the negatives? Yeah. Would you ever do current events again? Probably not. Not the way I used to. I mean, I did a current event yesterday, right? I did a current event. of a pretty big event. But as far as the way I used to do them, probably not. I don't currently use a Twitter. I don't like Twitter as a platform. I find it clunky, unusable, and I just don't want to learn another platform. I have multiple platforms I have to mess with every day. Jay, the reason you need to leave them alone. Let me get rid of, because I assume that's probably not even the real Alex Bromley. And straps with a deadlift suit and touch and go does not count as 10. That does not count as 10 at all, by any stretch of the imagination. No, the reason I'm telling you to leave girls alone at the gym is because they're there to train and they're used to guys hitting on them nonstop. So much so that it's just not a good idea. It's not a good idea. Get rid of some of this nonsense in there. And it's because they're used to being harassed all the time. Okay, it's not a good face. Your odds of success are low. In other words, unless you are, how do I put this? Unless you have charisma and swag and you pick up girls easily all the time everywhere you go, the odds of you having enough game to successfully pick up women at the gym is really low. It's because they're used to guys hitting on them nonstop while they're there, and it really annoys them. Like you'll actually are more likely to piss them off. So if you're already asking for girl advice, do you see the problem? You're asking for girl advice, which means you're not a guy who just gets pussy nonstop as easy as you get water. Okay. You clearly aren't, or you wouldn't be asking about girls, right? You would just be like, dude, I banged 57 girls. That's what you would be like. Okay. If you're not at that level, leave the girls at the gym alone. Trust me on this. It's going to be a waste of your time, and they're just going to dislike you. If they're interested in you, they'll approach you at the gym. Jay, I've not heard about anything as far as money on Twitter. All right. Thoughts on finasteride? Haven't experienced any side effects on it. I've heard the side effects are bad. And, why risk it? Like, what do you plan to get out of it? Think it's going to slow your hair loss down a little. Okay, that's fine. But is that big of a deal? Jason, do you think the black pill content is dangerous for young bucks on the internet world via chat or memes? I think the black pill content is definitely a problem. I think it's definitely a problem. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't really have a view on dating apps per se. I don't have a view on them. I've never really used them. Okay. All right. So, well, Chris, wait, you're like social media is about you stop trying to make money with it. No, that's not a waste of time. Okay. Get rid of this stuff. Yeah, Chris, I don't know where you got that idea that no one makes any money on social media. Wow. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and wind this down. We've run this for 30 minutes. So I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.